if you are looking for the perfect trick to drive you insane, make you frustrated, maybe make you want to quit skateboarding, this is the one for you. It seems like such a simple thing. It seems so basic if you're looking at this from outside, if you've never tried it before. Trust me when I say it isn't. This is one of the hardest things that I do on a regular basis, and it's definitely the hardest trick that I've covered up to this point. Now, before you begin, you might expect me to say that you need to learn how to spacewalk, but you don't. This has so little in common with a regular spacewalk, for reasons I'll get into in a bit, that you almost need to forget that the regular spacewalk exists. You do, however, need to make sure you can do a hang 10 nose wheelie incredibly well. You need to make sure you're competent, consistent, and confident with them. You need to be able to do them at speed, you need to be able to do them without wobble, and just feel natural in that position before you even begin thinking about doing a spacewalk with one. So if you're not at that point, if you're not very good with hang 10 nose wheelies, go away, just stop this video, go away, go learn those, and then come back. If you already know how to hang 10 nose wheelie, well, you're in for a fun ride. So let's give this a go, and hopefully I can explain it to you. Hopefully it shouldn't be surprising that you need your feet in a hang 10 position to do a hang 10 spacewalk. You know, it seems obvious, but I'm covering all the bases, just making sure. However, in terms of foot position, I think this is much more picky. It's much more specific than the regular hang 10 nose wheelie. Every so often you see someone do a nose wheelie with one foot behind the other, somewhat like that. I think that's a very old-fashioned way of doing it. It's much more of an old-school style. Or kind of more sideways because they're street skaters who learned a straight nose wheelie or a G-turn first. This really needs to have both feet pointing forwards and, importantly, level with each other. If one foot's slightly in front, I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration, but if one foot's slightly in front of the other, you're not going to get a controlled and balanced swing in both directions. You also want to be just far forward enough that your toes are kind of coming into the kick nose. If you're using a single kick, it's probably worth spinning the board around and doing this on the tail, just to give yourself a bit more room to work with. Now, I mentioned at the start, this has nothing to do with a regular spacewalk. Now, if I explain what I just mentioned about the foot placement, you should see kind of why. When you do a regular spacewalk, you're twisting all the time. Your feet are working in opposition to each other. You pull this one back and you push that one forward, and you repeat the other direction. And you're just constantly pushing the board, swinging it around, pivoting around two wheels. You can't do that on a hang 10 spacewalk. If you get into position and you try spinning, actively turning on two wheels, you end up just losing the board. You don't want to ever be pivoting on that front truck, ever. What's actually happening here is more akin to pumping on a slalom board. With your feet in that position, you're going to carve left, carve right, constantly shifting your weight from one side to the other to turn rather than pivot. It's a very, very different feeling. In order to try and explain this, to understand the mechanics of this, I'm actually going to leave the board aside for a second, because when I was trying to figure this out, the best clue that I had, the best guidance I had was actually from Dan Gesmer of Seismic, because he used to be really good at these. And I said, how do they work? What's the key? Because I was still trying to twist like this. And he said, it shouldn't be these muscles. Where you feel it is here. It's the muscles just below the shoulder blades. Because in order to shift your weight to carve through the turns, you're actually doing this. And you'll see a lot of guys get on a board and their arms are basically flailing, they're windmilling, but it's because they're doing this motion. And if you watch professional slalomers, they tend to be doing the same thing. This is going to be annoyingly difficult to translate to video, to explain to you at home. It's something you have to feel, and you're not really going to see. But in order to actually make this work, it feels almost like I'm trapping that wheel dead. As I push forwards, I swap all my weight to the right foot, go loose on the left, and then I can kind of carve through. And it really is a carve. You don't want to think about it as pushing or pivoting. It's just a little carve. Lean onto the right side. And then before it goes too far, I've got to reverse. So I'm going to shift my weight to the left and carve that way. It's something you've got to just get a feel for. But remember, it's always about the carve, never the pivot. I want to be the first to admit that I don't feel like I'm particularly good at this trick. I've been working on it for 2 years, and I still am nowhere near mastering it, which goes some way to show just how hard this really is. One freestyler who truly is amazing at this, I think he's probably the best in the world at it, is a Dutch freestyler called Erwin Shovit. His real surname is completely unpronounceable. Now, he actually told me, well, to be precise, he told me off. Because as far as he's concerned, you should be able to start from a stationary position and just go. Just pump. Lift up the back wheels and gyrate and pump and go. I can't do that. It's very difficult. That's a goal for sure, but that's not how you want to start. To begin with, just give yourself a little bit of speed. Not too much. Just enough momentum that you can balance. Find the slowest that you can do a regular hang 10 nose wheelie at and stick with that. If you go any faster, you're much more likely to just lose the board, to fling it off in some random direction. Once you're ready to get started, really pay attention to those muscles in the back that I mentioned earlier. Try to focus on not twisting, but gyrating those, taking the arms one direction and the other. And like I said, start slow, gentle push, and then try getting used to that feeling of just shifting your weight from one side to the other. That's all you want to do to begin with. Don't expect to be able to hold this and go for miles. Just focus on that feeling. Because as you shift your weight to your right side, what's happening is the truck's going to bend, it's going to carve, and your left foot's just going to push out slightly. You never want to think about pushing the other foot. Just focus on that shift, and then get ready to shift back to the other side. Once you get used to the feeling of using your core muscles to shift weight, I think the next problem you're probably going to run into, if you're anything like me, is actually posture. Because when you do a regular nose wheelie, your posture isn't too important. You can get away with crazy back arches. God, who was it that did that? It's a really famous photo. Steve Cathy, maybe. Or you can get away with maybe leaning forwards. Maybe not at that speed. That's all fine when you're not trying to spacewalk, when you're not trying to twist. When the spacewalk comes into it, your posture has to be perfect. The second you go too far in one direction or the other, you are going to lose the board. 99% of the time, when I drop one of these spacewalks, it's precisely because of that. I've arched back too far, which pushes the board out in front of me, or I've leaned forward too far, shooting the board out behind. Everything has to stay as central as you can. The next problem you're going to run into is caused by two different things, but they're both effectively the same. And that involves the board going too far. Getting out to there, oh God, I almost broke my ankle, and just losing it. There is a very narrow window of acceptability, if you want, on this. The board cannot go too far out, because as soon as it goes too far, it's just going to snap out from under you. It's just going to fly off in a random direction. Now, that's caused by two problems. The first one is by actively trying to push it through a turn. That's why I'm saying you've got to get this idea of a normal spacewalk out of your head. That's got to go. The second problem involves rolling too fast. If I come back on myself, oh, I already do not want to do this. If I go a lot faster into these, oh God. The second you have too much forward momentum, everything becomes uncontrollable, and that was ridiculous. And it was bad. Let's try once more, see if I can hold it in any capacity. But I can't. I know I can't. This is foolish. Right. Bit more speed. Oh God. What I've hopefully just pointed out, this is not a high-speed trick. That scared the crap out of me. Something else to consider is the surface you're learning these on. I made the mistake of trying to learn them on really, really rough asphalt. It doesn't work. It's not good. Now, this place has a nice, smooth, predictable surface, apart from one or two patches that look like this. Anything that is rough, uneven, sloped, any small stones, that's enough to make this trick basically impossible. If I hit that when I'm doing a hang 10 spacewalk, because all my weight is at the front of the board and I'm constantly pumping, that's enough to throw me off. It's such a small thing, but these are so picky. Make your life a lot easier and find somewhere as smooth as possible to do them. That's my top tip. Right, minor stylistic point here. This is not so much about the way to do the trick, but it's more how I feel the trick is best done, let's say. And like I said, you can ignore this. It's purely my opinion. You can disagree with it. You'd be very wrong, but you're allowed to disagree. For me personally, I always hate when I do the spacewalk and then just put it down. It just doesn't feel satisfying, and I don't think it looks good. You've got all this swinging and this movement, and then all of a sudden you've just gone bonk. Like, what is that? It's not very good. But something I do most of the time, I try to aim to do, when you know you're about to end the spacewalk because you're running out of momentum or your back muscles are screaming at you, rather than just put it down, try flick it forward. So all it is, just a little nudge from here, chunk, to there. By doing that, you're not really stepping backwards, and it gives it a bit more oomph, a bit more of a stylistic exit. You're carrying the momentum forwards to a degree, which is much better than just killing it dead by going. But like I say, you might disagree. But these small details, these little things like that, they make a huge difference to how your skateboarding looks. And I think that one in particular, it's a good one to bear in mind. That one wasn't even the best spacewalk, but I still think it looked nicer because the way I shunted out of it. Again, your opinion might differ, but it'd be wrong. One more point, something I forgot. This is the point where I film the examples that go right at the end. Stupid thing, should have remembered. Felt it in my hips because you've got to squat. This isn't something you can stand rigid on. You've got to bend your knees, you've got to squat slightly. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to do that shimmy. So, yeah, you'll definitely feel the burn. Doing these a few times, thighs, backs. Surprisingly high intensity move, this, for something that's quite small. Honestly, I wish there was more I could say. I wish this was like a flip trick where you can just say, oh, move your foot slightly here, change this angle slightly, and yeah, all of a sudden, bang, it works. Honestly, flip tricks are the easiest thing in the world. Anyone can do them, but something like this requires much more knowledge about yourself. You have to really feel it. You have to feel every part of the movement. And that's tough. That takes time. That takes a lot of repetition and a lot of sessions where you're going to feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. Your first few sessions are going to be horrible. They're going to be flaily. You're going to be pivoting rather than pumping without realizing. You're going to fling the board off in all sorts of directions. And it's going to seem impossible. But after a while, you'll get one. You'll just get one where it works, where it clicks, and you'll get maybe 3 swings, maybe 4 swings, if you're very lucky. And you'll feel it. And you'll know, oh yeah, that's what I've got to do. And then you probably won't do that again for another 2 sessions, 3 sessions. But you've got to persevere. You've got to keep pushing and keep going for it. And eventually, you'll get this kind of shift and you'll get this feeling and you'll go, yeah, and that's what it should have been all along. Tony Gale was right. But there's no shortcut. There is no easy solution. You just have to keep going. You'll know when you get it right because you'll wake up the next day and those back muscles that go across the bottom of the shoulder blade and up through here, they are going to hurt like hell. That's when you know you've got it. And then you've just got to practice it for another year, and then maybe you'll be able to do it every time. God, I hate freestyle sometimes.